teaching you the art of industrial real estate. This is On Air with Team Jensen.
And how long, what's a little bit of the history? Where did it start? Was it you mentioned family business. What generation would you guys consider yourselves?
Yeah, it's funny. So on the drive, JJ and I drove down here together, and I looked over to him like, "Hey, we better make sure we know this. We've got the same story down about the history of the business, because I'm sure we're going to get asked." So JJ and I are both were what we call the fourth generation.
Okay.
So the company was started by our great grandfather, Oscar Gerson, along with his wife Tony, and they immigrated to the United States in the late 1930s from Germany. Jewish family, not a great time to be in Germany, so they were fortunate to be able to get out. And at the time, to immigrate into the United States, you had to have a sponsor if you're coming from Germany. And there was a family in Kansas City that we're still friends with today, a wonderful family that sponsored my great-grandfather and his wife, and at the time, my grandfather and his brother, who were under 10 years old. And so they got approved to immigrate to the United States, and didn't know anybody. All they knew was that somebody from Kansas City sponsored them, and I think somebody told them, "Oh yeah, Kansas City, they got great beaches there. So that's where you want to go." And so that's how our family ended up in Kansas City, and we've made it a home here ever since. But JJ, fill in any gaps that I'm missing. But my great-grandfather started in Kansas City as a shoe salesman, actually, and his territory was part of his territory was covered like New Mexico and parts of Oklahoma, where there were Indian reservations.
Right.
And so he would stop in these Indian reservations and barter for like turquoise, some of their handmade jewelry, and
semi-precious stones.
Semi-precious stones.
Right.
And while he was on the road selling shoes, and he would bring it back to Kansas City, and he would sell it to people looking for those types of goods.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I think it occurred to him, man, there might be a business to be had here. And so, in 1941, he and his wife Tony started going out to these Indian reservations, sourcing cool items, bringing it back to Kansas City, and selling it here locally. And then the business has evolved in a lot of ways. JJ, you probably know this part of the story better than I do.
Sure.
But,
yeah. So 41. As Jacob said, they were kind of just working for themselves, going back and forth from the Indian reservation, selling jewelry. I get a little fuzzy in the 50s, 60s, but eventually became a costume jewelry company. And we were selling at a lot of drugstores that are no longer around.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 90s, if you're familiar with Ben Franklin stores, there are not a lot of them left anymore, but they were pretty big. They had an importing arm that was doing their seasonal product that essentially went belly up, I believe. And we had a relationship with them because of the jewelry business. And they came to us and said, "Hey, will you guys step in and help us get this product in the United States?" So we did, and pretty much the rest is history. We've been in the seasonal business. Since then, continue to make acquisitions to get into similar product categories. But for the most part, we're out of the jewelry business, though I think there is some in our warehouse sale.
Yeah.
Come out to Olathe for our warehouse sale. It's Monday through Saturday.
Is it this next week? Or?
It's going on right now, yeah.
Oh, right now.
Through the month of May.
Through the month.
Is that just something you do like on an annual basis, or?
Yeah, just to clear out. It's good product, but it's April, May are typically slow months for us, kind of in between seasons. So to keep people employed, rather than laying people off and rehiring, we open the sale and turn some inventory into cash. But I think one of the things that I always like to highlight about the family story is that Jacob alluded to is there's a pretty well-off family in Germany, our family. They had a high-end department store not too dissimilar from Hall's, and the Nazis came to them one day and said, "Hey, we're buying your department store." And they said, "Oh, it's not for sale." And they said, "No, you don't understand. We're buying your department store."
Yeah. Wow.
Pretty much came to this country with nothing, and in my mind, what kind of keeps me motivated and proud is just, like, to me, it's the epitome of the American dream. obviously a lot of bumps along the way, and people debate whether or not the American dream still exists, but that's what I think when I think of it. So
Right.
And a funny story that just so the business we gave you just like the elevator summary of it, the evolution, and it's changed a lot. But for a time, costume jewelry was a big part of the business, like the zirconian, is that the term?
Cubic zirconia.
Yeah. And I remember when I was really little, I was talking to my grandfather. He told me that if you remember in like the old drugstores they'd have, and some still do, like turnstile, like they look like turnstiles where you can like turn them around and
Earrings
on
and
hooks.
stuff on
They
it.
had like cheap old earrings.
Yep.
We figured out that like 30% of our sales came from because they'd get pilfered, they'd get stolen so often that the drugstores had to keep reordering them. And so but that wasn't a sustainable business model.
Don't want to bank on that.
Yeah, we figured out something else. But yeah, it's great. And it's just on the topic of family business, something that I think worth mentioning too that I really appreciate, have come to really appreciate, is that I think it was our parents, so it would be the third generation, set a rule in place that, for future generations, if you're interested in coming to work for the business, you've got to go work somewhere else for, was it 3 years?
Yep.
At a minimum of 3 years, just to get the experience, and so you for a lot of different reasons, but one of which certainly so you could come back, and if you do want to join the business, contribute, in different ways from skills that you've learned somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so JJ and I, we've taken different paths to get back to Gerson, but I think both now looking back really appreciate the time that we had doing other things, that now we can come back and sort of with some different perspectives and trying to add value in different ways that we learned. So I think JJ's been back for 5 years, two now for me. So how long have you guys been in your business?
Oh, so I've been at Kessinger Hunter now for 8 years. And I did some internships and stuff like we were talking about earlier in town with like a general contractor and a logistics group. But I did jump in straight after school. I toyed around with the idea of maybe going to Denver or Chicago to do some logistics and kind of learn and maybe make some connections. But, we work with our dad, Dan Jensen, and he was adamant that if I was intent on getting into the business, that I might as well get going as soon as possible and start growing my book. So but I will say, to your point, Stuart, spent, 7 years?
Yeah, similar time. I mean, 7-8 years with a manufacturing rep out in Lenexa, just selling commercial HVAC as an outside salesman in the mission critical space, like data center world. And honestly, candidly at the time, coming out of school, part of the reason I did it was because I felt like I had lived the life of Dan Jensen for the first 22 years of my life and had done nothing different. And I was like, okay, let's shake it up a little bit, kind of carve my own path. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. And, I enjoyed the people I was working with and all that. But ultimately, always saw Kurt over here working with Dan and having a good time, and always knew that I felt like I would be good at the real estate world as well, and I was ready for a change a couple years ago, and the timing was right, and Dan's still in it full time, and so I made the jump about 2 years ago as well, and have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But to your point, I would say, because we both, I jumped fresh in out of school and he didn't, and I think there's pros and cons to both, but he really he brought a lot of other experiences to the table, and also, candidly, a lot of relationships that we've already been able to, take advantage of and grow from. So
Totally.
I think there's a lot that you can benefit from going out and seeing how other people do things.
Yeah,
before
definitely.
coming back under the roof.
But it is a great point. Sorry, jump in real quick, that you made, that going into a family business, that growing up in it, I remember thinking to myself, well, first of all, I always thought I was going to be quarterback for the Chiefs when I grew up.
You and me both.
So, I had it all planned out, and they found their guy.
Yeah,
so
someone took your spot. Yeah, that's right.
But
Still got a shot.
yeah, you're right. Sam Walton started Walmart when he was, I think 50 years old or somewhere around there. So
Sam Alton was in our fraternity.
it's never too late. Oh yeah.
He was just a class ahead of me, I think.
Yeah, just a few. Yeah.
Right? Was he the alumni that always came? Was always hanging around.
Right.
Those red pickup, that red F-150.
But it occurred to me a few times along the way as I was starting to think about, would I like coming back to Kansas City and joining the company, that having grown up in it and seen my dad, do amazing things with the business along with JJ's dad, that I was like, well, I've sort of seen that movie before. And what I came to realize is that we're a very entrepreneurial family, and that whether it was a Gerson or whether it was somebody else, that I was going to be happy so long as I was able to sort of scratch that itch. And credit to, I think, our dads and the family, that they've given us a lot of autonomy to step in and implement different ideas, and give us responsibility that without micromanaging or keeping the leash too tight. So sorry, I just interrupted you a minute ago.
Well, it's a cool story too, and I mean, there's the fate that got the family to Kansas City to begin with. I mean, what if that sponsor was, some entirely other city in
Miami,
Kansas City?
or Malibu? Oh, man.
I mean, sorry, I guess, on one hand, but no, it's
You got the Chiefs,
It just goes to show you, when it all boils down to it, you could be making decisions now that affect generations to come.
Totally.
I mean, that's the cool side. That's a cool thought about it, but
Yeah.
We've been in business 83 years, and it's not a question of, it's how do we stay in business for 200 years?
right.
And we sell product that no one needs to survive. Like, it is the least essential product, though we got deemed an essential business during COVID. The least essential product you could ever imagine. So it's about remaining important to our customers and continuing to evolve, because as we joked earlier about gnomes, like, it comes and goes. And we started with turquoise jewelry. Now we're selling home decor and furnishings. And what's next? We're working on that. So.
Yeah.
But we try to stay in our lane as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's cool. And I do appreciate, every company is always evolving and growing, and there's folks in the company that are key partners and players that age out. And so everyone, really has to be thinking about the future. And it's cool to hear that, and I'm sure you guys still have a great support and a good team over there that you can lean on when you need to, but it's very cool to hear that you guys are having the opportunity to really step in and have some really key roles that you do with your team, to kind of shape things and bring that next generation vision to the table and start working on it sooner than later. Because those are conversations we have at Kessinger Hunter. We're not family owned. Our dad does work here and has been a principal for a while, and so there is a family dynamic for us. But we still, and we treat each other like family, we like to say. But there's still a lot of those similar kind of nuances going on, and it's always cool to see a local company like this that's growing organically and leaning into the future versus kind of trying to hold on to what they've created, that kind of stuff.
I mean, to that point, each generation, there's going to be an evolution in the way that you do the way you do business, and that's kind of all four of our jobs, to kind of figure out what's going to take it to, how it's going to evolve, what's going to take it to the next level, or what's going to be different, for better or for worse, but and obviously take the good examples that we've had in front of us over the years and mold that and use what's there, but
Totally.
Continuing to evolve. But
And we, I think one of the things that JJ and I are pretty aligned on is leveraging technology to try and improve the business. And I don't, as young on the younger end of the spectrum, maybe a little bit more in tune with, what's relevant now from a technology standpoint. And we just this week went live with the new ERP system, which is like it's replacing our old one with our new one is like open heart surgery for our business. And when we scheduled this today, I was like, it sounds great as long as we're both still alive and haven't died of a heart attack. Friday works. But thankfully, there's been some hiccups, but the building's still standing.
We've been hearing you're not the first guest to mention an ERP shift and transition to a new system. I mean, I feel like we've been talking to a lot of folks that are, making changes there, getting onto a new platform or whatever that may be, and everyone speaks to how daunting of a task it is from start to finish. But
it's a challenge, I'm sure, operating the business just in general when that's taking place, because it takes the full manpower of the team.
Yeah.
There are positives and negatives to having seasonal cash flows. Mostly, we'd like to be more level, but when it comes to a positive, is we're pretty slow right now. So we couldn't ship really Monday, Tuesday, and part of Wednesday, and it was kind of like, it sucks, but it's way better than us being down during peak season. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why we chose to do this right now, is because I'm sure you guys planned ahead.
Definitely intentional.
gives you some time to do some housekeeping items and
have a holiday picnic.
Right.
That's
exactly.
fun.
You're
So
right.
You guys got, so next time, you guys said you guys weren't the grill masters, but next time I think we need to get the video crew out there, and you guys need to be manning
So
the grill.
we've got a cousin who's technically second cousin. He's won, I don't think he's doing it this year, but he's won Party of the Year like 6 times in a row at the American Royal Barbecue Festival.
Okay.
So just
barbecue.
let him
We're
keep
more
his-
partiers than grillers.
So we both tried to pick up a few things from. He's very good at the grill. I didn't know we were grilling today, so I need to be involved next time. To your point, bring the egg out. It's so bring the.
Yeah, the
I think
green egg.
it was some hot dogs and frozen burger patties from
Yeah.
Costco.
Yeah, right.
Are you guys grillers?
I got a Blackstone at home
Ooh.
that I've gotten pretty skilled on. Now I go to a hibachi restaurant.
I was
I'm
gonna
just
say.
like, all right, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Let's show me something.
Step
I
aside
can't
here.
do.
Let me show you
You're just
something.
sitting alone in the backyard squirting sake.
Yeah, as they're like singeing my eyebrows off.
Tossing shrimp.
Well, him and his wife genuinely were obsessed with hibachi before he got the.
It was kind of tied to the original or the 2019 Chiefs Super Bowl run. During the playoffs, there was this one Saturday before the first playoff game. We went and got hibachi, and we just kept winning. So we just kept going to get hibachi.
It's funny. I've been to my favorite was the one on the Plaza that's been gone for a while.
Yeah.
What's the place to go?
Well, there's a couple out south, and honestly, I can hardly remember the names.
There's one in PV that I went to.
There's one at like
one in
the
PV is not
villages.
very great.
Yeah,
it lacks
Let's not
flavor.
slander anyone.
Shinju, I think
Something
it's
like that,
called.
yeah.
And
My wife and I were the only ones at the table.
Yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
flinging shrimp.
We went with our 3-year-old to that one a few weeks ago, and she kind of hated it. So it's like, all right, maybe we won't be back here for a little while.
You should
but
just get one going at your house.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. My friends have even asked for the service. One of my buddies got me the hat too, the tall
there you
red
go.
hat. I can't flip anything into it yet. But
Yeah.
Speaking of innovation, there's been zero innovation in the hibachi game in the last
Right.
decade.
Like
Right,
the heartbeat.
and the
volcano.
volcano top.
Onion
Yeah, it's all-
volcano.
come on.
They got to improve.
Seen
Right.
that
The,
before.
the one thing that's cool though is one of my buddies had I think it was for his wife. He had a birthday party, but they had a birthday party at their house, and they had a hibachi chef come in and do
Yeah.
the cake. And that I will say that is a pretty fun time.
Yeah.
Is when you have them into the house. But if you ever have the opportunity, listeners, it's worthwhile.
I think they should be a sponsor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do all the stuff.
Instead of beers,
Look
just
out, Martin City.
Fill up
Yeah.
a squirt gun with sake and shoot it in our mouths.
Yeah.
I'm gonna crack one open here.
Well, hey,
Might be
yeah.
a second.
Now, that leads us to our sponsored
Our
segment.
sponsored segment here.
We are going to crack it open with the Gerson Companies. All right.
I do have a question for you guys, being in the family business and seemingly have grown up together, I assume. Now you've worked together for a couple of years, right, since Jacob's come along. What is one aspect about your personalities or how you operate that you learned after working together that you didn't really see growing up together? So I've got one that I can speak to about this guy.
That's a great question.
and
I would love to hear your answer.
Don't forget, we can always cut it out if we need to.
Is this live? JJ, personality-wise,
If it would help, Stuart can go first, too, if you want to think about it.
Do you
yeah.
want- do you want me
well,
to
I
s-
want to say I want to make sure I say this diplomatically. I don't
I was gonna say I can start if you want me to.
want
Wave
sure.
the white flag to start.
Go ahead.
I'll start with a little bit of a political answer. I think in our business, we've done an example set by our parents, done a pretty good job of really establishing our lanes within the company.
Yeah.
Where we, at the end of the day, know that each person has the best interest of the business at heart. And you hear all the time about like family tax in business and someone who comes in and adds no value and gets paid like a family member would. We don't have that, and I feel very grateful for that. And Jacob's background is more sales. Definitely out of the two of us, much more charismatic. And his dad's much more charismatic than my dad. I love them both. But no, I think it's been great. I don't know if there's anything I've necessarily learned, but it's been great working with him. I think Jacob and I, from the start, as long as you approach it with kind of respect at the core, like we can disagree, we can
Certainly, yeah.
not go our separate ways, but we can be like, you're wrong. But at the end of the day, because we know the other person's thinking about the best interest of the company, you move on.
Right.
I would say that I think JJ and I work really well together because we approach things sort of differently stylistically that complement each other well. JJ, although he'll tell you that even though JJ's like Cool Hand Luke, in the office. He'll tell you that in certain situations might be freaking out on the inside,
100%.
but you never know, And I'm the one in the office dropping F-bombs and
emotions on the sleeve a little bit more.
And it's from a leadership standpoint and just thinking about our associates, and the leadership starts at the top. And so when I let my emotions go a little bit, and it is super important, and I appreciate having JJ sort of be the steadier, calming influence that can help, keep things on track. And I think vice versa. Sometimes when we need a little bit of a rah-rah, let's kick things into gear.
Right.
That, something that I can bring to the table. But we've complement each other well, which is I think sets us up good for the future. And
you gotta have a steady Eddie out there too, right?
I've been told I have a great voice for bingo. Just B9, B9.
And for podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't have a great
Hopefully
face
I don't have
for
a
radio.
face for radio.
Well,
No, so I'm curious to hear your guys.
I was gonna say
I don't even know what he's about to say. So I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
my answer is not too far off from what you guys are saying, and I've laughed over the years because as Kurt and I have gotten older, we have like looked and sounded more and more alike.
We're different.
And
right?
when I first got into the business and started talking to, the real estate people in the real estate industry that already knew Kurt and already knew Dan, everyone was just like, "Oh my God, you sound
Jensen.
exactly like Kurt.
Another
You sound
Jensen.
Here comes another Jensen.
Or I'd see somebody at an event, and
That's what I grew up with.
and they'd
so
call me
welcome.
Kurt, or something like that. It's like, oh, you probably saw my brother. So, as many similarities as we share, I learned very quickly how different we are from the way we think and the way we just operate. And Kurt is just much more analytical and a numbers guy, and not gonna say you enjoy spreadsheets or anything, but just the way we come to an answer at the end of something, or we both take drastically different avenues to get there.
Yeah.
And there's a good yin and yang there like you guys were saying, and I've enjoyed that, and we've laughed when we've been prospecting and things like that, together. It's been pretty obvious at times. It's like, this guy's really kind of taken to you, and he likes you, so why don't you follow up with it?
I've been trying to talk to this guy for 5 years, and you walk in the door, and he loves you. I'm like, you just keep talking to him.
So just little things like that, the outsider looking in, it's like, oh God, yeah, you guys are identical, but yeah, just how different it is from an internal standpoint.
Totally.
So
I would say once a day, somebody just Freudian slip calls me JJ, just accidentally.
Jacob.
And my running joke
His
is
dad calls me Jacob.
my running joke is that's the meanest thing anyone's ever said to me. Mistaking me for JJ.
how dare you?
Just giving him a hard time. But it's so I'm curious to ask, we both work with our dads. You guys work with your dads. Mm-hmm. How has that been for you guys?
It's been good. Kurt's logged a few more years with them than I have, and one thing that I've appreciated about Dan is, while he is always going to continue to pitch some of the old school tried and true ways of doing things. He has certainly not been the older generation that is unwilling to learn and listen and understand that evolution and adaptation conversation we were having earlier, the technology stuff, doing stuff like this. He's been supportive of what we've wanted to do, and trying to stay innovative and unique in our industry and doing things that others aren't doing yet, or that's like we were kind of talking earlier, just being an independent shop, we have some flexibility that we can do some things like this that we feel like positions ourselves well, and he's been nothing but supportive of that. And so that's been cool. But then when I'm complaining about something, or not getting enough business, he's like, hit the pavement, go out and knock on doors. What are you doing?
Right.
So
go save us some money.
The phone's not gonna ring itself. You gotta go get calls. So that's been my biggest takeaway in my 2 years working with him.
Yeah,
and I would agree. I mean, we've been very fortunate. He's been an amazing mentor, and I've learned an awful lot from him. And like we talked about earlier, I've been learning from him for years about this industry. I'm not trying to give myself credit, but he hasn't always been open to the technology, and it's taken time to work on that, which again, it takes me, the first couple of years, it's like he's not going to change everything he's doing because some young new guy, or even if it's a son, comes in and has some idea. It's like, go learn the industry, learn the block. He always says the blocking and tackling is still the important part, which is literally just knocking on doors, calling on folks, and cold calling type stuff. And I'm curious if you guys recall anything about the pandemic with you guys, but I would say I noticed, and I think it changed everyone's perspectives, but I especially noticed with kind of that baby boomer generation, when the pandemic came about and whatnot, I saw a lot of perspective shift, and I think a lot of folks were more willing to open their eyes to where business is headed and how things get done. And because I would say since that time has come and gone, not that it's gone, but you know what I mean. Since it's come and made its impact, it's just been a lot different dynamic, and it's a much more. We lean into a lot more future opportunities and future ideas kinds of things. So.
So I joined Gerson actually right as the pandemic was sort of ending.
Yeah.
But to your point, is I think finally the pandemic forced Gerson to get a Zoom license, and instead of getting everyone licensed, it's like, oh, I think one license and everyone can share it will work.
and kicked off halfway.
And now
through
it's like, somebody reset the Zoom password? What's the Zoom password? And then we've come a little further since then. But
I guess from a business standpoint, in our especially brick and mortar retail, which is kind of the wholesale retail business that we're in, it's certainly changed a lot. And I think, especially when it comes to e-com, which, as I said earlier, I manage, and the way I look at that part of our business is it blew up 2020, 2021. I mean, we were comping triple-digit growth year over year, and I think at the time we were like, this can't sustain, right? But we were like, this is fun.
Ride the wave.
Yeah, this is fun.
It can't sustain, but what if it does?
Yeah, and I think what you've seen is, especially in home decor, home furnishings, you have I used to say when I met with retailers, like, you have the grandma who, it used to be a tradition that she'd go with her kids to the Christmas tree farm, or she'd go to the retail store and pick out those decorations. And during COVID, they were forced to do it online. And assuming they had a good experience, they might have been converted to an online customer for life.
Right.
I think that lasted for a bit, but now people are going back out into brick and mortar. If you look at any of the retail sales, and I know you guys are in industrial like that, the e-com growth is slowing down, and we've certainly felt that.
Yeah.
But people like to touch and feel stuff.
Yep.
Again, nothing we sell is necessary to sustain life, and especially as wallets are tightening up, people want to know what they're getting.
Yeah.
I know I'm personally scared about, call it the Temu effect that'll happen. Like, you go on Temu and buy what you think is an awesome couch, and you get a little tiny model couch.
Do you guys know about that? The Shein, Temu stuff?
Yeah,
It's
I've heard of it.
fascinating. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we certainly have, and Jacob came from the San Francisco startup technology world,
Okay.
so brought a lot of that forward thinking to us. But we've got, in the past year, we've implemented a pretty incredible phone system that really enables our salespeople and our customer service with like AI tools.
That's cool.
We're in the middle of launching our new ERP system, which will totally change the way we go to market. And I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but I'm really excited about is just we've done a bit of a reorg where our previous head of technology, his main focus is artificial intelligence as it relates to sales and product development.
Right.
Because the world, in our world, while it still might take the boat the same amount of time to get from China to Los Angeles, the world's shrinking, and things like Shein and Temu make it easier and easier for the U.S. consumer to go direct to the source and totally disrupt our industry. So
Yeah. Now, I would, to JJ's point a few minutes ago, just to backtrack to it for a second, it's probably very different in the real estate world, maybe. I don't know, you can tell me, that what they call the COVID bump, where everyone was at home and they just spent a lot of money on consumer goods.
Right.
Gerson really benefited from that. And I joined the company right after sort of that COVID bump.
it's been all downhill.
And so
since-
as I
That's how
and I coming in, learning the business, not knowing any better, I'm like, okay, great, I'm now responsible for sales, okay. And I'm like, what am I comping to? It's like the biggest year in our history, and I'm like, wow, we're not quite on track to do that again.
Great entry
Yeah,
spot. Yeah.
I'm like, am I doing something wrong here? Or,
No, yeah.
but so thankfully things have steadied out since then. But it's tough. It's a tough business, the business that we're in, just because we're unique in that we cater to the independent retailer, the mom and pop shop that maybe have one or two locations, and we're an important vendor to that retailer, and we do a lot of business with them, and that's really how Gerson was built, on the independent retailer. But as we've grown, we've figured out how to cater to as well sort of the regional retailers, like grocery chains, like Publix, grocery chain in the Southeast region, Menards, Midwestern, and then national, the Walmarts of the world, the Home Depots of the world, Costco's. And we're unique in that as a business of what we do, we design product, we have it manufactured, we import it, and we sell it to retailers. That we're unique in that we cater to sort of all three of those segments of the market. But it's becoming more and more difficult just in general, particularly with the national retailers and the regionals who, over time, over the last 10 years, have become sort of the biggest part of our business. That when people ask, okay, tell me about Gerson and who are your biggest competitors, I sort of explain to them, our biggest competitors are actually our customers, because the Walmarts, Costco's, the Home Depots, all these guys, they have offices in Asia that fully dedicated to sourcing product, cool, new, innovative product,
Right.
And cutting guys like us sort of out of the equation, because to them we're just an extra layer of cost.
Yeah.
And so, our jobs are to continue to add value in as many ways as we can, from an execution standpoint to a customer service standpoint, but certainly from a product standpoint, where we need to be one step ahead of the curve, from a trend, from an innovation standpoint, on the product front, to stay relevant to our customers. And JJ just alluded to it, but one thing we're pretty excited about, that as a company we've decided to really lean into and embrace, is artificial intelligence and AI. And I get it. I joke with JJ all the time. I'm like, it's such a sort of BS word at this point, because it's like, just attached to everything. Like, it's more of a marketing ploy.
It is everywhere.
Golf clubs. and-
Right.
Oh my God, an AI golf club. Yeah, that's what I need. That'll finally fix my stroke.
The club face just
Yeah.
gets flush every
adjusts,
time.
yeah.
But and from a practical standpoint, actually figuring out a way to make it more than just a marketing tool for Gerson, and we're working on some pretty interesting stuff. And one of the benefits of being a business that's been around for a long time, going on 83, 84 years, is that we have a lot of data that we've just accrued over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of data, really rich data that is ours, that is proprietary to Gerson. And so we've sort of realized AI allows us to do is really mine that data in a way that really wasn't possible before. And while at the same time adding in other data sets that might be generally available in the public or we source from different ways to try and extrapolate some cool insights. So I can speak to some things like on the sales side, for example. Just we take our data, our sales history by customer, and we can analyze, okay, what types of items have they bought in the past, and then layer on top of that, okay, where are they located by zip code? What type of store are they? Are they a drugstore? Are they a hardware store? Are they a boutique? Are they a gift store? And then layer on top of that, what are we seeing from trends? So we feed this model like all sorts of articles on, hey, these are the trending colors, snowmen are in vogue now. The big trend this spring summer season, and it looks like it's going to be for the next one as well, is mushrooms. It's a little insider tip.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Not the kind you were thinking, Kurt.
yeah. Right.
Any gnomes with mushrooms or anything like
Oh
that?
my God! How much time do we
Mystical villages.
have? And so we can take all these different data sources and then and extrapolate and say, okay, for a hardware store in Vermont, what items does the model tell us does the model predict will do really well for them at retail? And we can run that analysis to help on the sales front and go when we meet with the customer and say, hey, this is what our data is telling us. Here are the reasons why these items should do really well for you. And so far, we're just sort of, we're still in the experimental phase, and it's clunky, believe me. But we launched sort of a pilot program in January where we do twice a year. We have big it's called show season, where we go and we'll meet with a lot of different customers at our showrooms throughout the country. And we ran a little pilot program, and I think for the customers that opted in to participate, on average, their orders were up 29%, compared to someone that didn't. And so it's promising. It's the early sort of results have been promising, and it's something that on the business front we're excited about. There are a lot of different things, but certainly AI is one.
Well,
thing.
it gives you a way to efficiently evaluate a crazy amount of data.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd imagine too, as you get further into that, you can even get to the point where it will say, okay, this is what this customer that you already have is doing and where they're trending, but this is also a prospective customer that is really basically checking all these same categories as your existing customer. And I'm sure there's opportunities like that will come about. And
yeah, 100%. And we're already seeing that, and some of it is that marketing effect, because customers that we may or may not be doing business with, like, ooh, AI, what are you guys doing with AI? And
right.
you're like, oh, how much time do you have? But it's interesting too for our value proposition to. And by the way, this is boring. I love talking about our business, but so if it's like, cut me off at any time. But our value proposition to our big national retailers is, a Walmart, for example, they have a hard time taking risks on new products, right? They want to merchandise products that they sort of are tried and true, and they know they're going to do well. Yeah. And even before we started to lean into, artificial intelligence, we could go to them and say, okay, here's an item or a category that we've been selling to independent retailers now for a few years, the independent retailers have a more of a risk palette, or they can take on more. They can try new things, try different product.
They're trying to bring people in.
Yeah.
with that.
If they just have to buy one pack of something for $50, it's different than Walmart cutting $2 million
Right.
deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
so
sense.
we can say, hey, this is doing really well at the independent retail level. we can re-engineer it to sort of fit your price point parameters, and we're highly confident that it's something that you'll do well with as well. And that's sort of been our value in a nutshell proposition to the national retailers. And now with some of the stuff we're doing with data, it's sort of an extra layer on top of that. And because it is tough. It's a tough business that we're in, and because, like I said earlier, our biggest competitors are in many cases our customers themselves, and and we're fortunate that we've got great relationships with our customers, but we also joke with them that it's like, hey, you want to kick this to the curb as quickly as you can, and we get that, and we're going to make it really hard for you to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to like what we were saying earlier is, all these new tools that we're wanting to use and the technology, you have to be understanding and knowledgeable and becoming experts with them to stay relevant and to kind of stay ahead of that curve. But at the end of the day, the relationships and the blocking and tackling are still the key components of growing the business.
Still the backbone.
Yeah. And from your guys' side, I'd be curious to get your input, but we have another uncle who's a salesperson, and I always view salespeople on the spectrum of
the spectrum in general.
I didn't say that. Love you,
well,
John.
we got 3 salespeople.
Love you, Uncle John.
By the way, how's the curveball? I was gonna try it.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Crack it up, man.
Make sure you crack it in your
Yeah, crack. I'm gonna try this next one.
But I always view. Sounds good. It's a good sounding can. I view salespeople kind of on a spectrum. On the far side, you have like the used car salesman, where it's like, look how beautiful this bad boy is. You're gonna get so many chicks in this, that kind of thing. And on the other side, you have the true account manager, the guy who lives in the spreadsheets, the one who knows the person's business better than they might even know it.
Right.
Both are really still important in my mind. And it's the hunter versus farmer. Like our uncle, who is based out of San Francisco, he's a hunter. Always has been, always will be. He goes out and he lands the whales, and he does a really good job at it. He can struggle with the execution of it. We'll leave it at that. But then you have some account managers who, once they get the business, they can grow it steady. They're steady Eddie. They earn the trust. They build that trust. And you're not going to see huge pops out of them. So it's finding that training and finding that balance between the two, and providing salespeople with tools to be able to, at least the management side, like, 'cause that's the pain part, where it's like creating spreadsheets and PowerPoints and making it easy for people to do their job.
I'm curious. So talking to a couple sales guys across the table, tell me about your guys' business development. You guys pounded the phones, or out emails, calls, and trying to wine and dine?
Really kind of all the above. And kind of interestingly enough, to your, talking about the hunter versus the farmer, and to Stuart's point earlier, one of the things I've loved about having him on board is and I'm not, he's not some used sales carsman, car salesman.
I can put that hat on if you need me to.
Yeah. But, I think his previous job, he did learn a little bit more of that style. Whereas I think my strength is more maybe, to your point, once I'm in the door, I really am proud of how I can grow a relationship and earn that trust. But I would say from the day to day, I mean, my first 3 years, I genuinely I pulled call sheets from different databases we have, and went out to industrial parks and literally knocked on doors. I probably knocked on your guys' door a couple times, left my card and a flyer and things like that.
I think I saw you both about 2 years ago, and I turned around and walked right back up the stairs.
That was his first summer getting going. We were getting out knocking on doors and kind of just, this is what you do, this is how you do it, but he's already probably better at that than I am.
Just like, that's a big building. Let's go in there.
Or like, this parking lot looks full. Like maybe they need,
But I came from a world that, in my previous outside sales role, I was selling a product that was kind of captive, and there was a ton of install base of legacy equipment out there. I had contractors calling me all the time for replacements. I was calling on the engineering community to spec around, our stuff on the bid spec world, and we were the rep office for what was kind of considered the Cadillac of the industry from a commercial HVAC in the data center space. And so I went from that outside sales world where I, didn't necessarily have the tiger by the tail, but
inbound.
But I knew, but I
Push
knew,
versus pull, yeah.
but I knew that I was a lot of times going to be the basis of design. And yes, I was maybe pricier than my competition, but we were the tried and true. And then I went from that to like the real estate world where you have to build trust from the very get-go. And you tell somebody, you're a broker, and that wall quickly goes up. Mm-hmm. And I went from, having this captive product, and yes, the goal was to don't give anyone a reason to look elsewhere, right? Like be a good salesman, and the product would kind of sell itself. But, here I am now, it's like I got to sell myself, it's like, hey, let me be your guy. It's like, yep. So it was a total shift in this from a salesman standpoint. And so while I'm still, out there doing a lot of the old school, going and knocking on doors and stuff like that, there were times in the first few months where, I wasn't used to my phone not ringing and not getting a bunch of emails. In those first couple months, it's like, damn, Dan and Kurt are the only two that have emailed me in the last 6 weeks. I need to go find somebody else. Yeah. So there was that motivation, but it was a different it's a different sales world too. So it's
totally.
Yeah.
Well, and we are using, there's tools with AI that we are trying to implement more and more, but I think kind of like you touched on, there's challenges to trying to get it implemented. And we've explored some different things. We actually had U.S. Engineering on; they're a good client of ours, and they talked a lot about some of the artificial intelligence stuff they're doing. And we've met with their team a couple of times to talk about kind of what they're up to and how we can leverage it ourselves. And so we're always trying to do more and be better, without a doubt, from the prospecting standpoint. But still, in our industry, in this business, it's the more knowledge is power in our world, especially. And the more you're aware of and know what's going on, or who's moving where, or, oh, hey, these guys are out looking for warehouse space. There's ways that you can leverage that, and that your clients can benefit from that knowledge. And so it's still really just who and what do you know business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I always find, especially commercial real estate, really interesting in what you guys do, because like when we sell to an independent retailer and they buy one pack from us of an item and it may or may not do well, if it didn't do well, they forget about it, and
right.
They're going to come back next year. And we do, to some extent, have a captive audience. There's only so many suppliers who do what we do.
Right.
But when you guys are talking the dollars that you're doing on projects, when things don't go well, it's hard to build back from that.
Well,
right.
And I don't want to run my mouth too much, but
Sure.
The last cycle, there certainly seemed like there were moments of some used car salesman type of deals that were happening. And it was hard, candidly, it's hard to sometimes sit on the sidelines and be like, and you're not doing the transactions that maybe you see someone else doing, but it's like, well, but their client paid what for what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there's certainly still aspects of that. And unfortunately, I think commercial real estate brokers sometimes have a bad reputation, and but we like to think we operate a little differently at Kessinger Hunter, and we've been.
Well, and our goal, that's what we've all been talking since I've been on board, is it's not uncommon for our sales cycle with a client to be 18 to 24 months. I mean, our goal is to be just front of mind. When we're talking with somebody, it's like that. Whenever you might have a real estate need, it's like, oh well, Kurt, let's talk to Kurt and Stu. They've plugged in the market. They're doing this every day. That kind of thing. We're trying. There is certainly a stigma where it's transactional, and that's why I say that wall goes up when sometimes you're out knocking on doors and going in and talking to people, and you've got your flyer. Dan told me quickly, you got to ignore the no solicitation sign on the front window.
Well, but and also kind of like Temu you mentioned, I think that was the name of it. Your customer might be able to go somewhere else and they might get lucky and find a good deal. It's kind of like us, someone. If we know of someone that's looking for 50,000 square feet of warehouse space, they might think they can go on LoopNet and figure it out themselves. But the amount of nuances to the process of actually accomplishing their goal that we're experts on that candidly they're not. There's a ton of value there that we bring, and so that's kind of the challenge that we have. And to Stuart's point, our end goal is for someone to treat us like we're their in-house real estate person that they don't even really have to pay except for when transactions occur. And so, and to sell that is a tricky thing to sell when you don't know someone, and that's relationships are key.
Building that trust and rapport.
I could tell you. So we sold to the sale leaseback on our building 2-3 years ago, 2021, I believe, and we're not real estate people at the end of the day. So it was like we know the big names in the city.
Certainly.
But I'd say things like this certainly like open people up to your firm and like to someone who only knows the big names there.
Yeah.
I would also say too, it's been my experience that I think that and I'm sure it's not something you lead with, but when your clients realize that it's more or less a family business, that it matters to them, that there's like, okay, these people it's not just somebody they hired off the street that's may or may not be, in it for the long haul or committed, or it may or may not matter to them. That I think that it's a differentiator when you've got that sort of sense of mind that, okay, this person is vested in the operation, that I'm not going to have some new broker every 2 years from Kessinger Hunter, that they can count on you in the long term. I think that's something that that I've certainly benefited from, Sir JJ, that having our family's names on the building is certainly, it's a lot of responsibility, and but it's a big leg up as far as building trust, and something I try not to take for granted.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you guys really had a lot of fun, diving in with you guys.
Yeah.
And Gerson Companies is an awesome local and family-owned company, and the story you guys have is sorry
really
if I offend listeners, but badass, and
really neat.
Excited to see you guys, take the reins and grow the thing. So, but thanks again for coming on with us, and we're excited. Give us a follow on Spotify or Apple, On Aire with an E on the end, AIRE, On Aire with Team Jensen. And next week we're excited to we're going to have Lynn Electric, George Grebe, the president over there, is going to be coming on and talking to us about what they're up to. So